Acting Speaker, I rise to make a contribution on the Voluntary Assisted Dying Amendment Bill of 2025, and in doing so I genuinely acknowledge and respect all the views expressed by all parliamentarians and community members who've contacted me on this most profound and sensitive of spiritual, ethical, moral and legal issues. Acting Speaker, as parliamentarians we'll have a responsibility to help ensure that every Victorian is provided with the opportunities to live prosperous, safe and fulfilling lives, but also means that come the time for those facing terminal and end-of-life illness, ailments and diseases, those suffering from intolerable pain, that we provide Victorians with the genuine choices they need in line with their own preferences and beliefs to have a peaceful end of life and death on their own terms. So both in life and in death, which is a natural part of life, we have profound responsibilities to reflect on, exercise and discharge on behalf of all Victorians in careful, prudent, nuanced and considered ways, and that's certainly what I intend to do with this bill. Because we know that for some people, despite the best of health treatments and palliative care, the suffering remains and can become beyond bearable for many as they head towards their final days on this earth and to the next life. That's why the Victorian Labor government passed the Voluntary Assisted Dying Act in 2017, with Victoria leading the nation at that time in offering a safe, compassionate and dignified end of choice for those suffering from life-limiting illnesses, intolerable pain and suffering. It's given families the chance to say goodbye with grace, to be present, to support and to honour the wishes of the person they love. It's a bill and reforms that I continue to support. And the original Act was largely informed by two comprehensive inquiries, the Legislative Council inquiry into end-of-life choices in 2017, which recommended Victoria should legalise voluntary assisted dying, and the Ministerial VAT Advisory Panel, which at the time helped inform and guide the development of the Voluntary Assisted Dying Act of 2017, which was accompanied with 68 safeguards and creation of a VAT board to oversee the implementation and monitoring of VAT, including with this initial 5-year review. And it's this review that took place between June 23 to June 24 that I'd like to draw the House's attention to, and found, quote, access to VAT is safe, the program is working as envisaged, with no reports of ineligible individuals gaining access to the substance. Compliance with the Act has been very high, and the median time in which people can access VAT is progressively shortening. Between 29 and 23, 1,527 permits were issued for people who were eligible to access VAT. Of these, 60% of individuals chose to use the VAT substance, while another 400 individuals had the substance dispensed but did not use it. The number of permits issued each year has been increasing over time, effectively doubling from 2019 to from 2037 permits and to 485 permits in 2023. Demand for VAT is anticipated to increase as community awareness of VAT increases, with modelling projecting there will be around 700 applicants per year by 2028. The median time to access VAT has decreased since the introduction of the VAT, with the median time to obtain a permit decreasing from 28 days to 21 days. The VAT regulations require the Secretary of the Department of Health to determine the outcome of a permit application within 3 days. Of all the applications, 99% were determined within this time frame and 95% approved within 2 business days. 77% of people seeking VAT and 93% of families reported the VAT process was compassionate, and overall the VAT Review Board reported that there had been high compliance with the Act, 99.3% compliance for all completed applications, only 14 cases did not apply. And the review also found that many accessing VAT were very much doing so in their later years and end of stages of terminal medical conditions, as was the intention of the original Act. 85% of VAT applications were accessing palliative care, 64% of applicants were over 70 years of age, 76% of applicants were cancer patients, 9% neurological diseases, 3% respiratory failure, 2% cardiovascular disease, 1% end kidney disease, and 9% were other conditions or not reported. The 5-year report did not put forward recommendations regarding any legislative changes, but rather put forward 5 comprehensive recommendations regarding the ways we can improve access, awareness and supports and resources for all concerned within the existing legislative framework. The findings and recommendations set out in the 5-year review were also echoed in the most recent 24-25 VAT Review Board annual report, which also showed that VAT Board received an unprecedented 837 requests for VAT. And again, as the community awareness continues to grow, the board anticipates this will rise significantly. They've updated their forecast to 1,300 requests each year by 2028, and that's when the original estimates at the time of us moving the legislation suggested between 100 to 150 VAT applicants on average per year. When combined, the fact that is that the overwhelming evidence presented via the 5-year VAT review and VAT board's most recent annual report of the VAD Act 2017 is that by and large it is working as envisaged. But of course, the review, the annual report, the feedback from various stakeholders also shows ongoing opportunities for further refinement and improvements in operations, including through Appendix 6 of the VAD review, the barriers outlined in the annual report, and also set out in the Minister's second reading speech, particularly around other states having moved their own schemes since Victoria implemented ours. And on these basis, the bill before the House seeks to propose a number of new changes. And that's why, Acting Speaker, following much deep reflection, consideration and consultation over the last 13 days, when this bill was first tabled in Parliament, I have formed the view that there are clauses, provisions and elements of this bill that both I do support, and there's one that I have serious concerns and renovations about, because in many respects they appear to be a significant departure from the original intent of the VAD bill to offer safer, compassionate and dignified end-of-life choice for those suffering from life-limiting prognosis, illness or intolerable pain, in parallel and complementing palliative care processes and care, and because, as the report's indicated, the VAD scheme is largely working as intended. In the areas that I do support of the bill, number one is expansion of the Australian citizenship, permanent residency and Victorian residency requirements. So a person must be an ordinary resident in Australia for at least 3 years and a resident of Victoria for at least 12 months from the first request. Number two, the proposed removal of the requirement for a third prognosis assessment for people with neurodegenerative conditions. And number three, the provision of greater choice on how final VAD substance can be administered, including the current self-administration mode, and now also via adding a practitioner administration. However, there's a number of clauses and provisions that I have concerns and reservations about. Number one, this includes allowing registered medical practitioners to initiate discussion about VAD for the first time. This is a significant shift from the intent of the original legislation and has remained a vital safeguard. Number two, permitting a registered nurse, but also health practitioners such as allied health professionals to be permitted to initiate VAD discussions. As interpreted under the Health Practitioner Regulation National Law, this could include psychologists, podiatrists, physiotherapists, pharmacists, osteotherapists, optometrists, occupational therapists, medical radiation practitioners, dentists, chiropractors, Chinese medicine specialists and others. This again is a significant change, vastly expanding the scope of which health professionals can raise and proactively discuss VAD with patients. Number three, the bill seeks to expand the prognosis requirement from 12 months for applications up from the current 6 months for terminal conditions, doubling in effect that time frame. Number four, the bill amends medical practitioner eligibility requirements, proposing to allow assessing medical practitioners to have 1 year's experience practising as a specialist medical practitioner rather than 5 years. I believe a more balanced approach that helps ensure assessing medical practitioners have both the professional, health and life and community experience will remain important. Number five, the bill shortens the time between the first and final request to access VAD from 9 days to 5 days. The original timeframe provided an important safeguard in helping ensure people were provided with an appropriate time to deeply consider and reflect on their VAD requests before proceeding. Rather than simply reduce the timeframe, as set out in the VAD review, we could consider more opportunities to better raise awareness, resourcing and support for eligible people to apply and go through VAD process earlier. Currently in Victoria, for example, just for some context, when one switches their energy, electricity bill and companies, they have a 10-day cooling off period to cancel their contract with their new energy provider without penalty. Surely the existing 9-day timeframe has merit in this context, or at the very least allowing people to contemplate their decision to access VAD over a weekend pause where appropriate or possible. Number six, the bill also requires health practitioners who conscientiously object to VAD to provide minimum information to patients as approved by the Department of Health Secretary. But the bill does not provide clarity on that information, nor does it seek to include that material within the bill like we do with current paperwork associated with the scheme. But concerningly, number seven, the bill proposes an exemption to process the requirement for interpreters to be specifically accredited by the national body. This has been largely attributed to the reported lack of individuals certified with the National Accreditation Authority and translators and interpreters, NATI. However, I believe that the response to this issue should be investment and support by governments to all levels to train and recruit more qualified interpreters. Our elderly, non-English speaking community deserve the highest levels of care and standards when it comes to their health and wellbeing, and this should be no different when it comes to such a vulnerable point in their life regarding VAD. As highlighted in the George Lakakis review into Victoria's multicultural policy in 25 just recently, quote, as part of the current current refresh of the Victorian Government language service policy, the Victorian Government should declare language services an essential service. As a result, the Government should not only engage NAATI credentialed interpreters and translators and invest in training and accreditation pathways to improve interpreter availability and quality. Number 8, the bill also seeks to remove prescribed VAT applications and assessment forms from the Act and provide them in regulations instead, with no parliamentary oversight. Number 9, the bill proposes to require ongoing review within the first 3 years and commencement of these proposed changes, and then at intervals every 5 years. I believe a 5-year interval is sufficient, given we have an annual report every 12 months that covers a lot of these issues. Look, in essence, I look forward to the detailed consideration part of this debate. I look forward to working in good faith with everyone across the chamber to try and find a more palpable outcome.